Hey, it's finally time to talk about assigns. My name is Playgue, and we are finally doing the assigns tutorial I have been referencing in many of my videos. To get to the assigns menu, we just push memory 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, and there it is. So basically an assign will let us assign another button or knob to do the job of another button or knob. So in order to access them, we have to have the assign on, and then we can actually scroll through the assign settings. If it's off, then we just skip it. A cool trick to quickly turning on or off assigns is to tap the memory 4 times. Go to the last assign that you have. So for example, let's say you need 1 through 4. Go to number 4, because that's the biggest number. Then turn it on, right arrow on, right arrow on, right arrow on. And then let's say you need to turn the assigns off. Start with the lowest number, then turn it off, arrow over, off, arrow over, off, arrow over, off. The reason we do it in that order is because when we turn it on, we have an entire menu that opens up. So if we started low and turned it on, we'd have to scroll all the way over, on, all the way over. To turn them on or off even faster, you can do a cool trick like this. Done. They're all off now. You're going to rotate the value knob first to turn it off or on. Then you're going to start right arrowing over. If you right arrow first, you're going to start just messing with your assign instead. So you're going to value over the opposite direction first, and then just keep spinning this while you tap the right arrow. And you only have to do it the number of times that you have the assigns on, but even if you pass it, it's fine. Yeah, that's the trick to getting all of these on and off very quickly. So now that we've talked about turning assigns on and how to turn them off, let's talk about what they can do for you. So if you have things that are broken on your device, so whatever happens to be, we can use assigns to work around those broken things. And this is how you can do things with an extra device too, like with a foot pedal or something. So the first one is source. Your source is the thing that is doing the thing. So just to keep things easy, let's say we're affecting our input level. The source is the thing that is now going to be affecting the input level. Let's say we have it on track effects knob and we have it controlling the input level. Our track effects knob now controls what our input level is. Source mode is mainly for pedals and pedal switches. You don't really need to worry about this unless you're using a pedal. But with moment, the setting will normally be off, or its minimum value, whatever that minimum is, and it will be on the maximum value only while you continue holding down the foot swish. Toggle, if you just push it, it'll just go from the minimum to the maximum. And then if you push it again, then it'll go from the maximum to the minimum. It's very similar to in video games like first-person shooters, where you have the crouching function. Sometimes when you click the C stick, you'll just go into crouching mode, and then you click the C stick again and you'll come out of crouching mode. Whereas other times you have to push and hold, and only while you're holding the C stick will you be crouching. But when you let go of the C stick, then you'll come back up. That's essentially what this is. Next we have target. Target is the thing that we are affecting. So in our last example, we said the track effects knob. So what is the track effects knob going to affect? Next, we have target minimum and target maximum. Now, not every assign will have this, because sometimes there isn't a minimum or maximum. Sometimes the minimum and maximum will be the words on and off, just to toggle something on and off. And other times there's just a line there that just means there is no minimum or maximum that you can set. So we can set it to 122, and then we could set the minimum for 22. Well, if we go back into memory, notice that my track effects knob is maxed out, but it maxes out the level at 122. And if I go all the way down, it goes to 22. What that also means is that whereas straight up or 12 o'clock would be 100 if it was from 0 to 200, that means the center is now 72 because that number is in the middle of 22 and 122. So hopefully that will give you a better understanding of what each one of those assign switches menus do. Let's quickly talk about the sources, what can actually be used to control things. So we have 3 different types of pedals or external devices. We have the pedal, and pedal. That's all in this port right here. Next we have the input. We have the track effects knob, and then we have tracks 1 through 5, record dub. So what this means is when you have a track that is already playing, so you have a track here, then when you overdub, that is when the value will actually change. And it'll also change when you push stop. Next we have the track play and stop. What this means is that the track is already not playing, then when you play it, that's when it'll actually change the value. And then you can stop it, and then that will put the minimum value. Next we have sync start stop. This involves MIDI stuff and extra devices, which is beyond the scope of this video, but that's what that's for. And then after that we have the CC numbers 1 through 95. And again, those are extra devices. This is more for like computer programming and using this as like a mixer in a very peculiar way. Again, a little bit outside of the scope of this video, but that's what all these CC numbers are. So in essence, without any extra devices, we are limited to the input effects knob, the track effects knob, and the start and stop buttons of each one of the tracks. Not that much option, unfortunately. Now, what can be assigned? Now, this seems like a lot, but once we break it down, it's a lot more simple and straightforward. So the first thing we have is record play. So where you can use one of the assigns to start recording with the knob. We can play and stop a track with assigns, which is pretty cool. We can also clear a track with assigns. We can do things like we can do undo, things, redo, we can do undo, things, redo, we can do undo, things, redo, we can do things, we can do. That's pretty cool. We can also affect the actual track play level this way. We can affect things like the pan of the track here. We can also mess with the target track stuff. Speaking of target track, let's briefly talk about what target track is. A target track is a track that you have assigned as the target. So a quick way to do that is to hold down the exit button, and you'll see a track starts flashing rapidly. That is your target track. This is the thing that's right before assigns, meaning that there's 2 ways to access it or change it. You can tap memory 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then right arrow once, and then you can change the target track that way. So if you're already in assigns and messing with assigns, you can just go over and do that. Or you can hold the exit button down from the main menu. Then you just tap the edit button, and now all of a sudden you have 1, 2, 3, 4, a new target track. So with that said, you can use assigns to control the target track. So in this case, we have it, I believe it's track 4 right now. So if I use this, I can now record, and you can change this throughout the song. Super, super useful. But that's what target means. And you can do all the things with the target track too. Next we have all start, stop. That should be pretty straightforward. We also have all clear. We can clear everything this way. Next we have just undo, redo, where you can affect the rhythm level, rhythm pattern. Notice that the target minimum and maximum is different, so you can scroll through different ones. Memory level, as we showed before. You can do the tap tempo and change the tempo that way. The master compression and the master reverb you can change. You can actually change the type of overdub mode that you have. So for me, I have click it once and it'll just immediately start playing. It won't go into overdub, but most loopers will actually have it to where they push it once and then they start the recording, and then when they push it again, it will immediately jump into overdub. I don't like doing that, but if I wanted to change the overdub mode mid-track, I could set an assign to do that too. Your input effects on and off, as well as the track effects on and off, what this will do is it will literally toggle your last tapped input effect and turn it on or off. So let's try the input effects. This one was my last input effect, as you can see here by the star. And so now if I do this, it should turn off and back on the input effects. Next, we have the input effects controls for all of them in the track effects controls. This will control the parameter of the track effects or input effects that is assigned. Normally, what would happen is the last thing that I tapped, that will be the thing that is affected. So in this case, vocal distortion, the distortion is affected by the knob, but nothing's happening. Well, what's going on? Well, that's because C is the one that I have assigned. That's the one that's being affected. That's pretty useful. So now, no matter what the last thing I affected was, it's still going to affect the distortion of C, because that's what I have as the assign. Next, we have the input effects A and C, what looks like ink and dink, or deck, ink and dink. So this stands for increase and decrease. All this means is that it will cycle through an input effect or a track effect. Decrease moves it one left, increase moves it one right. In order to move the input effect or track effect or whatever multiple times, you have to set up multiple assigns. This right here is the reason why we run out of assigns very, very quickly. Input effects control sets the whatever the last pushed button was, the control for that one. So let's say we tap this one last. We can control that to just 50. Now this one, we control that one to 50. And we can do this one to 50. Again, going into the increase and decrease of the last thing that we pushed. That's all that is. Target track, we talked about target track before, about increasing and decreasing. We can increase or decrease the entire memory itself if we wanted to with this side. So like, check this out. There, boom. Now we're on a different memory entirely. After the memory increase and decrease, we have the input level, as I talked about before, and our CC numbers. Hopefully you have a better understanding of what assigns are. I do want to give you several examples of how I use assigns in real-world tracks. So we're going to be looking at a lot of songs here on how I use them. So the first concept that I use assigns with is if I want to make it so I don't have to think about the last effects tapped. So for tracks like a Tribe or God of Loops or Still, what I will do is I will set the assign to only control what track effects C is. So in this case, I have it set to the reverb, and it'll control my reverb that way. Because I'm not using this specific knob to control any of the parameters in A or B, I'm only using it to control the parameter of C, I can set my assign. So now I can tap these all I want. I don't have to go through the extra effort or the extra thought of double tapping C anytime I need to adjust my reverb at all. The second idea that I use assigns with is to mess with things in other menus that I'm not in. We can do that by going into the slicer menu, and we can start messing with the rate, while with the other hand affecting the value of the transpose that way without affecting anything else. The third idea that I use assigns for is to activate or deactivate more than one thing at once. I use this in drum and bass arsenal. Rapid fire! And I do this with pyramids as well. And in this case, my tracks are just a little too far apart. It's 2 and 5 that I want to activate at the same time. So I will put an assign on that I just turn on when I'm ready to do it. And then I just tap 2. And that will start 2 and 5 at the same time. The fourth way I use assigns is to make it easier than having a third arm, which I am not a fan of performing naked, at least with the loop station. I need to be able to do more than one thing at the same time, and either the pieces are spread out way too far, or it's like 8 things all at the same time. Whatever it happens to be, that is a struggle. So what I end up doing is I use assigns to push one button, and that will do a bunch of things for me all at the same time. So then the transitions are much better. So in the case of stop doing that, I need to be able to change the value of the granular delay from 64 to 28. And I need to be able to change the granular delay from what it was before, which was a delay. Instead, I have the assign to when I tap track 3, I have this go from delay to granular delay, so I increase it. That doesn't change the time, though. What I do instead is I just move this knob any direction, doesn't matter how, because I set the minimum and the maximum as 28. So in practice, that ends up looking like this. Track 5, 2, and 1 are playing. Boom. Just like that, we can instantly transition to the next part. The fifth way I use assigns is to limit the range that the knobs do. So when I'm trying to set up a parameter of something, let's say the transpose, and it goes from -12 to +12. Well, sometimes I don't want it to go down all the way to +12 or -12, so I will set a limit for the minimum to be +1, as I've described before. In this case, I set it to the input effects knob instead. What ends up happening is that this has its full range, and I can affect it to its full possibility. But I can also affect it with the other knob here, which is very useful. However, you notice this also affects the input effect as well. So just something to keep in mind. And so now, whenever I need to do a -1, I can just flick this and it'll go to -1 at the bottom, and then I can turn this and I'll go to -12, and it just makes things a lot easier to do. So that thing makes things a lot easier too. I also do that in the song Sexual Healing for the transpose sequence there. I just want to be able to hit the values really easily, so I just have the minimum and the maximum set to the two values that I need, and I just swap between those. The next reason why I use assigns is to make it easier to hit certain values. As you saw with the limiting the knob ranges, it's very easy to hit a minimum or a maximum just by maxing out the number, or by setting the minimum and the maximum as the same value, and then I'll hit that value every single time. Other times, I need multiple values in something. What setting the minimum and maximum ends up doing is it will make the ranges for each specific number bigger. What I mean by that is that the numbers 0 through 100 is contained within this whole thing. But if I just have the numbers 1, 2, and 3, then all of a sudden the number one single digit or one single value there's 1, here's 2, and then the rest of it is all 3. So in Ganja Man, for example, when I'm setting the transpose, I have the minimum to +3 and the maximum to +7. That way, you can see I have a much easier time hitting the specific note values that I need to hit, instead of having to manually go in and change them and having to do that quickly, because you don't want to be able to hear the 4 and the 6. So if I just do here, I can just jump, and it makes it much easier. And if I need to change the value above that, then I can click 1, and it's super easy. Let's say I need the values 45 and 50. I could set the value to, say, 47. Then I could jump straight to that value, go up 3, and I'm on 50 all of a sudden. Then I need 45. I just jump here, and boom, I'm down there much more quickly. Don't think you're limited to just the minimum and the maximum value of a particular parameter. The last way that I personally use assigns is to play the loop station like it's a keyboard. I can hit certain value notes just by assigning the buttons, so the minimum and the maximum of the play and stop buttons. So like with the track Playground, I don't have an oscillator bot, so I need to fake an oscillator bot on this thing. Well, in order to do that, I can just use assigns, going into assigns here. So now that affects the value of my granular delay. So you'll watch the time change as I'm playing for and making track 5. So now I basically can have the oscillator bot to play on the MK1, and it ends up sounding pretty dope at the end. And that is it. That is assigns. Holy crap, this was a very long video, but I wanted to make the ultimate definitive video on assigns and how to use them. The only thing that we didn't talk about here is extra devices and like hooking up to your computer and using all that. Again, this video would be way too long if I started talking about all that stuff, but this should hopefully give you a much better understanding of how assigns work, how you can use them, and how to better understand them. So with all of that said, let's look at a song that uses a whole bunch of assigns and different ways of doing that. Take off your blindfold. 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 Take off your blindfold.
Take off your blindfold. Take